In an apartment room, Niju was about to receive offerings from a beautiful girl. The girl was willing to be a maid and do any task for him. Even washing his body was on the platter. For 1,000,000,000 years, he would be receiving a maid of his dreams. To go to this point, he had to think back in the past. It's been a few months since he started high school, and his status was at a low, having nothing. Somebody appeared and told him if he had nothing to say to not talk. Her name was Akiho Hikura, and she immediately dashed away from him even though they were childhood friends. A dazzling individual named Kamashiro, the prettiest girl, picked his book. It had a maid covering, and she returned it to him. He shyly tucked the book away, and she was interested in the fact that the book had relations to maids. She always wanted to talk to him because he was alone reading his books. He was sorry for being alone, however. She wasn't ridiculing him instead. She mentioned it was wonderful. She was usually different by being called clumsy, and that may be rude. She decided to leave and wanted the book he had when he was done with it. Later outside, he was walking past an alley and heard Kamashiro yelling, "Stop." He rushed over, saying he'll call the police. She looked helpless, and her parents left her with 1,000,000,000 yen debt that had no relation to her. Unluckily, her father would sell her out, and he shouldn't interfere. She was crying, saying that he had nothing to do and should not involve him. He was thankful for her act, but with confidence said he was fine. The donkey was grinning until he pulled out an emblem. It was the Niju family's seizure of assets. He was Renja Niju, the heir to the family. The Niju family was very powerful in all sectors of business. He brought out a checkbook and slapped a page onto his suit while he was trembling. He paid off her debt, and they had no means of staying and were actually grateful. With glamour, he will handle her situation. He was walking ahead while Kamashiro's head was slow. She couldn't understand why he would spend 1,000,000,000 yen, but 1,000,000,000 yen had no meaning to him. She knew he was wealthy, but not on the scale of wealth he displayed. He lived alone and invested in stocks. His father remarried, now having a stepmom and stepsister. She understood, as she was in a dark place before too. She willingly was going to do anything to pay off her debt. He told her to not worry, but she was aware he was kind, and only said 1,000,000,000 yen wasn't much for her to not be uncomfortable. She was smarter than she looked, and she was grateful for his help. Now the mood swapped with her joy being displayed, and he was embarrassed. At a bend, he would see her at school tomorrow and started to walk off. He looked behind and saw her shivering, wondering about the issue. She actually had no place to go, and her parents weren't present, and her house was seized. He would arrange a place for her, and words couldn't reflect her thanks. Getting that would take time, so he told her to stay at a friend's house. She laughed, saying she didn't have any close ones, and she looked at him with cute eyes. She got close and demanded they were friends. She used a cuteness tactic to persuade him, and he didn't want to force her to come over. She gave up, thinking it was a bother to let her stay for free. However, he was up for the idea. She turned around thinking about her day and realized the book he dropped. She had a brilliant idea and grabbed his arm, running somewhere. She was shopping for something and made him stay at one spot. He began to face the other direction while she was changing. She thanked him for waiting and appeared as a maid. He began to blush, and she assumed liked maids. She wanted to be hired as a maid for him. He couldn't refuse and brought her home in that maid costume. He was sorry for the mess, but it was her job to clean it up now. He wanted confirmation she would be his maid, and without hesitation she said yes. Since she was brought to his house, she assumed she was hired. If she were to be kicked out, he imagined her being stranded at a park. He didn't want that reality to be true, so that's how Kamashiro became a maid and lived at his house. There it began. She was a maid of service and would even help him wash his back if needed. For 1,000,000,000 yen, he became hers, and she wanted to become his ideal maid. Using the bath might be a bit embarrassing, so she would be making the bed first. He remembered there was only one bed and asked where she would be sleeping. She didn't know what to do, but our dude took the task of sleeping on the sofa. She didn't like that, as Niju was her master, and began to pout in front of him. It wasn't right to let her sleep on the sofa, and she offered to let them sleep on the bed together. A chapter later, he couldn't believe she was serious on that topic. She wondered if it was wrong, but he was happy over the fact, but assumed she wouldn't like sleeping together. She wouldn't mind because a handsome person like him saved her. He changed the topic, asking if he had anything to eat. She caught on asking if he was trying to escape. Sharing a bed with her would make him nervous. He wanted to confirm whether she was good at chores, and she proudly said she was. He was mesmerized by her looks. "Really?" he asked. This made her pout up, and she started walking to the kitchen. She tripped, falling down, and then her skirt flipped upwards, making our dude look away. Akiho asked if she was okay and lent a hand towards her. He didn't want her going through all this trouble, and he asked if all guys like homemade meals from girls. It was true, and she decided to hold his hand, asking what he said. A meal like that will make him happy, and she wanted to give him that happiness. She started going to the kitchen, realizing if she made a great meal, they'll sleep together. It was a promise that he never agreed to, however, she assumed it was accepted. Kamashiro was persistent, but a feeling of her skills not being there was guessed. He asked for her plan while she held a carrot, saying something he liked, and he told her ginger pork. She understood and pushed him to the sofa. He couldn't imagine a pretty girl like her cooking for him. Unpleasant noises were heard from the kitchen that brought his anxiety up. A huge noise interrupted his phone session, and she asked if the ginger pork was ready when she was the one cooking. He asked if that was the pork, and that indeed what she tried to make. He was sure it was a failure, but a pretty girl's dish couldn't be ignored, hence he decided to taste the concoction. She was worried on the sidelines about him trying the dish. He was sorry, even though she made it, and she recognized it was a failure of a dish. He was okay, but knew it was hard to say that she wasn't good at household tasks, and this made her bow and apologize. She was a clumsy individual, labeling herself as a mess, and assumed he was disappointed. She was not a mess, in fact, she was beautiful and smart. People aspired to be her. She was happy about these comments, recovering quickly. But as his maid, she cannot be useless, or she's not worthy. It's not about skill, rather what she was able to do. That's where the value lies. Now he has taken over the task of preparing dinner. She decided to show her usefulness to him. After their dinner, they decided to separately take showers. She finished her shower and thanked him for the clothes being lent. For the sleeping arrangement, he decided to sleep on the sofa, but it's unacceptable for a master to sleep on the sofa. So they couldn't sleep together, but her not being able to cook made her want to sleep with him more. Maids don't usually do that, however, in her world this was the case. That aside, she should be aware and will be too late if something happens. She put her hands on her face, saying he was thinking of naughty things. But with confidence, she knew that Aisho wouldn't do anything to her. Sleeping alone was scary, and she was about to get kidnapped before. If he didn't sleep with her, she would cry, and he felt like he was being manipulated, saying yes to her offer. He got in the bed with her, and because she had family issues, she wanted to sleep with somebody else. She already fell asleep, and he had no choice but to provide her refuge to bring peace to her heart. Sleeping with a fine lady made him unable to sleep. The next morning he was tired and had to get up for school. He happened to be facing her, and she blushed immediately. They got up and apologized for no reason, but she acted like she saw a ghost. He wasn't disturbed, but it was a reward which made her have a huge smile. She learned that hugging him was a reward. It made her happy that he trusted her, even if unconsciously. Next time she'll hug him for sleeping with her, and he asked if she felt embarrassed. She didn't feel like that since it was part of her job as a maid, but that's not part of the job. Speaking of maids, she wanted the book he had yesterday about them. He was embarrassed to give it over, but he left it on a shelf after finishing it. She entered a so-called library, but it was just tons of books. She asked if he read them all, but he chose randomly. That doesn't mean he liked Mo-themed books, and she didn't want him to embarrass himself. He thought she wasn't interested in those things, but she liked science fiction and mystery. She found him reading books every day as interesting and would be using the book he read for her reference of work. He was shocked that she was going to use a light novel as a reference. She wondered if it was better to choose an educational book, but that book captivated his interest. The maid did seem cute to him, and she wanted to be his ideal one. If the book has the maid, he prefers that it would make it his ideal book. He looked through the bookshelves and gave her the book, making her smile. She was thankful, and it was time for them to go to school. She tripped, falling down and hitting the ground. At school, our boy was drained. Living with a beautiful girl wasn't good for his heart, and he was hoping to catch a break at school, but she spawned out of nowhere. She didn't like how she saw her as a ghost, and he was sorry. He didn't know her matter, and she was popular, so she worries about what others think. She whispered to his ear to keep their living situation a secret. She didn't want it to get out because they'll say they have an improper relationship. It was a secret between them, and the word secret made him ponder. In the past, he made a promise with somebody else, a girl in particular. Somebody tapped her shoulder asking what she was doing and if they were close. She claimed they were acquaintances, but he hoped she would say friends. She was being invited to a barbecue and was pressured to join until he was hit on the head. A fine lady appeared and told her to stop pressuring her. She told him to move away, and he took his walk of shame. Kamashiro thanked Hikura, and Hikura disliked how she didn't say a word about the bug that was pestering her. He was a bit pushy, and Hikura glanced behind her. Our guy asked if he could help her, and she didn't like him calling her first name casually. Kamashiro connected the dots, asking if they were great friends. Hikura's eyes turned into spirals, claiming they were just childhood friends. Our boy said Hikura wasn't fond of him, and she agreed. She grabbed her coat, and just because they were friends didn't mean it would stay like that. He started to compliment how well of a student Hikura was and was different to him. But she tried to say he wasn't always like that. Somebody interrupted, saying Niju did have friends. Our mistress boldly declared she was friends with him. Even though she said he was an acquaintance, she was sorry she lied. The other lady couldn't believe the popular girl Shinjo was friends with this guy. Shijo began to say how kind he was for finding a place for her, but she realized that was supposed to be a secret. Niju stood up because of shock, and Hikura started to question them. He tried to clear it up by saying it was nothing to worry about, while she agreed it was nothing. However, she did mention he forgot promises, and our boy didn't remember anything. He told her happy birthday, remembering it was her day, and to distract her. She began to twirl her hair, happy that our guy remembered her birthday. This was the same girl that supposedly detested our guy. When Hikura was little, she was given a gift that he assumed was thrown away. She shouted that it wasn't. She still treasured that gift and would wear it sometimes, and this made Niju and Kamashiro shocked. She was shy about it and took out, revealing a glistening pin. He couldn't believe it was true, and that she would wear it. She claimed it had no meaning and was just pretty kind of a good luck charm while thinking about the past. He was glad she liked it. He leaned over the desk while Kamashiro was puffing her cheeks. He would get her another gift, and she invited him to go shopping later. Kamashiro boldly grabbed Niju's hand and said he had something to do with her. Hikura looked over and asked if they were dating afterwards, asking if she doesn't mind them shopping. A tense battle was forming between the two, and Kamashiro snapped, saying they were dating. On the other hand, the other fine lady ran away, calling Niju an idiot, and Niju was just trying to reconcile. She was sorry, but it wasn't a lie. When two people went out, it would be a date, and she just wanted to fulfill a maid's duty. But Hikura was outside the classroom eavesdropping. She began throwing things into a cart, happily shopping, because Niju was present. She excitedly said it was a date, and if someone were to see them, it would be an issue, but there was no problem. He asked what would happen if people found out they were living together while his childhood friend was eavesdropping. She asked if he was worried Haruka would find out, and he didn't know why she mentioned her. It was because he happened to be close to her. She was his childhood friend, and even if they haven't been together in a while, he knew everything about her. But this made our heroine sulk. She leaned to him, asking if such a pretty childhood friend made him happy. She reminded Niju that her birthday was on March the 3rd, and she wanted a gift, but he thought it was just a fortune-telling trend. He asked if she was into astrology, but that wasn't the case. Instead, she wanted to celebrate his birthday and might hold a party for him. It was maid time for her, and she would be doing laundry, but he didn't want her to force herself to do it. She didn't believe Niju trusted her, even though she wasn't good at housework, but certainly would try. She rushed to the laundry machine with the goal of doing laundry. She pulled boxers out with a look of interest. He reminded her she had to separate the clothes before washing, and then she pulled out a pair of panties. She ran out of the room, unable to handle the task, and decided to clean instead. She held a bucket of water, and he told her dust removal was usually first, but she tripped. Water poured all over them, and he caught her. She was sorry, and he tried to not glance at her. He reassured her it was okay, but she began to tear up over the fact she cannot do anything well. He was blushing at her acts. Soon Hikura bursted in, asking what they were doing. She was obviously angry, and this startled the two. Kamashiro separated from Niju, and Niju told her breaking in was a crime. She broke in because nobody was answering the doorbell and because Kamashiro lived there too, but nobody told her that. Kamashiro confirmed her status, and the whole room froze up. Hikura raised his body and demanded answers on why they were dating, but he said she is just a maid. She asked why he didn't hire her as a maid instead, and this made him shocked. She made up her mind to live there and become a maid for our glorious character.